A metallic roar shook the earth. They weren't cannons, they weren't tanks. They were thousands of motorcycles moving in unison. And at the center of that storm of steel and asphalt stood him, Donald J. Trump, protected by an unexpected brotherhood, by an army without uniforms, the bikers. If this sounds unbelievable, subscribe now, because the story is only beginning. Donald J. Trump, a name that provokes thunderous applause and furious boos in equal measure. A businessman of skyscrapers and casinos, a television star, and finally, president of the most powerful nation on earth. A man who built an empire with his surname as a registered brand, and then decided to turn it into a political banner. But the summit was never a safe place. With every victory came new battles, rival politicians seeking his downfall, courts knocking at his door, journalists dissecting every word, every gesture, every move. For millions of supporters, he was the only one capable of restoring America's lost greatness. For millions of detractors, he was the embodiment of division. Trump was not only surrounded by Secret Service bodyguards, he was surrounded by invisible enemies, constant criticism, and an unrelenting media siege. Vulnerable on a personal level, controversial in politics, and yet more visible and more powerful than ever. And in the midst of that hurricane, he needed not just protection, but a symbol of strength. Stay with us and hit subscribe, because the unexpected is about to appear. It was then that something few could have foreseen happened. From the margins of society, from those endless highways where the wind and the roar of an engine are the only laws, appeared a parallel world, almost mythical, the bikers. Men and women who lived by their own codes, forged in brotherhood, in unshakable loyalty, and in defiance of any form of control. The bikers, with their leather vests marked by patches and scars of life, had always been seen as a counterculture, as modern riders defying the established order. And yet, in the figure of Donald Trump, they found something unexpected. A leader who, in their eyes, spoke the same language they carried tattooed on their skin. Words like freedom, American pride, resistance against the system echoed like a familiar anthem. The unthinkable happened. The magnet turned president, and the riders of the asphalt crossed paths. Two universes that seemed incompatible, political power with suits and gilded offices, and the road with leather and steel collided. But instead of rejecting one another, they recognized each other. Trump saw in them raw force, a loyalty impossible to buy, and they saw in him a banner for their own defiance. Out of that clash came an improbable alliance, a president guarded not just by security, but by a brotherhood of flesh, metal, and fire. And if you believe loyalty still matters, subscribe now, because this is only the beginning. The images were so overwhelming they seemed pulled from a Hollywood film. From the horizon came a roar that grew like a metallic storm. First a faint murmur, then a deafening thunder that shook the ground itself. Highways trembled beneath thousands of Harley-Davidsons, advancing in what looked like chaos, but to the Brotherhood it was harmony, a living organism moving as one. Leather vests, covered with patches and battle-worn insignias, gleamed beneath a merciless sun. American flags snapped violently in the wind, colliding with the black banners of clubs, symbols of rebellion and unbreakable freedom. The smell of gasoline, smoke, and burning rubber filled the air, while the vibration of the engine seemed to travel through the bones of anyone standing nearby. It was not noise, it was a heartbeat, a pulse of steel shared by thousands. And at the center of that storm stood Trump, no longer just a political figure protected by agents in dark suits. He was the nucleus of a fortress on wheels, a rolling wall of loyalty and defiance. Around him stretched an army without uniforms, without hierarchy, but bound by something far stronger, a vow of brotherhood. This was no parade designed to impress cameras. It was a declaration carved into asphalt. The biker brotherhood had chosen a side, and they announced it not with speeches, but with the roar of engines that drowned out doubt and opposition alike. From above, drones captured vistas that looked like scenes of war. Rivers of motorcycles flooding highways, cities brought to a halt, ordinary life suspended by the spectacle. People stopped in their tracks, holding up phones, recording in disbelief, whispering to each other that they might be witnessing history itself. Some cheered, some watched in stunned silence, others frowned at the raw display of power. But no one could ignore it. For those who lived it, the day became a ritual, a baptism into something greater than politics. The thunder of engines was not just sound, it was a visceral cry, a vow shouted in unison. Loyalty, defiance, belonging. In that moment, asphalt became an altar, and motorcycles became symbols of a new myth reborn. And if this scene gave you chills, subscribe now and ride with us through history's hidden battles, because what comes next is even more unforgettable. The reaction was immediate and as polarized as Trump himself. The press, bewildered, didn't know how to frame it. Some headlines called it intimidation, an army of bikers as a personal guard. Others hailed it as authentic patriotism, the pure loyalty of a base ready to fight for their president. On social media, the phenomenon exploded. Hashtags set Twitter on fire. Home videos on TikTok and YouTube reached millions. Memes multiplied like wildfire. Some compared the scene to gladiators protecting an emperor. Others saw a fractured America turning politics into tribal spectacle. But beyond love or hate, the image of Trump surrounded by thousands of bikers etched itself into memory. A reminder that politics is no longer measured only in speeches, but in moments of raw force. And if you want to witness more of these defining moments, hit subscribe, because the next one might shock you even more. In a world where fame and power seem as fragile as a television screen, that roar of engines reminded us of something essential. Loyalty cannot be bought. It must be earned. And in that moment, amid smoke, steel, and freedom, Donald Trump was not a solitary president. He was the leader of an indomitable brotherhood. If that gave you goosebumps, subscribe now, because here the roar of history never fades.